world leader can't read or write, but runs a country. We assume leaders are the smartest people in the room. But what if the person running an entire country can't even read or write his own name? In this video, let's know about the shocking truth of a world leader who ruled with power, but not with literacy. This is the story of Idi Amin. Known around the world as the Butcher of Uganda, Idi Amin ruled the East African country of Uganda from 1971 to 1979. His rise was fast, brutal, and built on strength rather than intelligence. He led armies, addressed nations, and commanded total fear. But behind the intimidating figure and military uniform, there was a hidden truth. Idi Amin was almost completely illiterate. He could not read official reports, understand complex documents, or write his own speeches. And yet, he held the highest office in the land. Idi Amin's early life was one of poverty and obscurity. Born in the 1920s in Koboko, a remote region of northwestern Uganda, Amin came from a small ethnic group and never experienced a stable education. Most credible sources say he dropped out of school around the 4th grade. He was later recruited by the British colonial army, not for academic skill, but for his physical strength. He started as a cook, then rose through the ranks due to his discipline, loyalty, and sheer intimidation factor. His career was built not on ideas, but on obedience. Amin had a gift for performance. He learned to memorize speeches written by his aides and deliver them with force. He didn't need to understand every word. He just needed to shout them loudly. Behind the scenes, assistants would read and explain government reports to him. He would then issue orders without knowing the full details. His decisions were driven more by instinct, suspicion, and anger than by information or strategy. But that didn't stop him from running a country. During his rule, Uganda underwent one of the most disastrous periods in modern African history. Amin expelled over 60,000 Asians from Uganda, triggering economic collapse. He signed million-dollar oil and arms deals, countries like Libya and the Soviet Union, without fully understanding the contracts. He used state funds recklessly, throwing lavish parties, buying weapons, and rewarding his loyal military officers. The Ugandan economy, once stable, crumbled under his watch. Still, the dollars kept flowing. Despite his inability to read a budget, he moved huge sums of money across borders. Aid from Arab nations, military support from foreign governments, and deals with international smugglers filled his personal accounts. He treated Uganda's national treasury like his private wallet. Millions disappeared without explanation. Roads were left unfinished, schools closed, hospitals ran out of supplies, but his palace remained untouched. And while the economy collapsed, his paranoia grew. He surrounded himself with uneducated, loyal soldiers who wouldn't question his authority. He hated intellectuals and feared anyone who had a degree. One of his prime ministers, a well-educated and respected academic, was repeatedly ignored, mocked, and finally removed. Amin openly declared that educated men were dangerous. He believed books were tools of rebellion, not progress. And so, under his rule, teachers, journalists, judges, and university students became targets. Many were imprisoned. Thousands disappeared. It's estimated that between 100,000 to 500,000 people were killed during his 8-year rule. The man who couldn't write his own name silenced those who could. On the global stage, Amin became a controversial figure. He appeared at the United Nations, gave chaotic interviews, and made shocking statements. But much of what he said made no sense. International journalists described his speeches as incoherent and bizarre. Often, his aides would whisper translations and summaries into his ear. Still, he smiled for the cameras, shook hands with world leaders, and portrayed himself as a revolutionary African strongman. He challenged Western powers. He offered shelter to terrorists. He made enemies of Israel, the UK, and even the US. But he had friends too. Colonel Gaddafi in Libya, King Faisal in Saudi Arabia, and several Eastern Bloc nations saw him as a useful ally. For them, his literacy didn't matter. He could sign deals. He could open borders. He could be bought. And in the end, that's what mattered most. Amin's reign collapsed in 1979 when Tanzanian forces invaded Uganda and overthrew his regime. He fled to Libya, then to Saudi Arabia, where he lived in exile until his death in 2003. He never returned to Uganda. He never stood trial. He never apologized. He also never read a single history book about his time in power. He didn't write memoirs. He didn't reflect on the bloodshed, because the truth is, he couldn't. His story is a chilling reminder that literacy and leadership are not the same thing. You don't need education to gain power, but you might need it to understand the consequences of using it. Idi Amin's rule was not just a tragedy of violence, it was a tragedy of ignorance. His decisions weren't just brutal, they were blind, and millions paid the price. We often say that knowledge is power, but Idi Amin's life shows us something darker. Sometimes power doesn't come from knowledge. It comes from fear, control, and silence. He couldn't read or write, but he could destroy a nation. Here is a quick question. What happens when the most feared man in a country can't even read or write his own name, yet controls everything?